pronounced that incorrectly, but you'll tell us the correct pronunciation. And I even have it taped to my screen. So I have been trying to pronounce your name every single day for the last week. But let me just tell you that you love the cold weather because you studied under SUNY Binghamton undergrad, Bachelor of Science in Biology, magna cum laude. Congratulations. And then you went to Cornell, where you received your doctorate of veterinary medicine. After Cornell, you continued your studies. You are a lifelong learner. Intense 1-year small animal medicine surgery at the prestigious Angel Memorial Animal Medical Center in Boston, Massachusetts, which I took my pets to. Thank you so much for your fine medical that you provided to my beloved animal. After that, you spent 10 years in working in the College of Veterinary Science and surgery residency at LIVS, where you moved to Las Vegas in 2016, I believe. And then you've continued and you've been flying all over the world, traveling, and you're also out of town today. So thank you for visiting with us today. But you moved from veterinary, like actual surgery, and created this whole telehealth. So tell us, I'm going to stop my sharing and move this over to you. What's up, Doc? How did you move from one area to another and create this incredible company? Tell us all about it, because I have been listening to some of your recordings, and every time I listen, I learn something new, and I'm continuously curious about what's happening with you.
Well, yeah, thank you.
Floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm Dr. Shadia Reapplying. Absolute honor to do anything with Cornell, whether it be the hackathon, partnership through my telehealth company, or for the CTBN. This is an absolute honor, and I hope everybody takes something away from this. I know a lot of work goes into these presentations, and so anybody watching now or in the future, much appreciate that you pay attention to this kind of stuff. So thank you. So I will go over how I transitioned from the operating room into the virtual space. Give me one sec. There you go. Okay. So we already went over my background here, thank you. And just so everybody knows here that this talk is typically about an hour-long discussion that I give all across the world. However, for our purposes here, we're gonna focus on more of an entrepreneurial lens so that the young professionals that are up and coming, who will be our future, can take what they can from this, glean whatever wisdom they can, and hopefully it'll help incite some ideas. So this is our basic outline here for our talk today. The idea of VetTriage, a 24/7 video teletriage platform, came from an old concept in the veterinary field where a concerned pet owner would call the hospital and ask, hey, this is going on with my pet, should I be concerned, should I come in? And the receptionists, who are not medically trained, always gave the answer, if you are concerned, come in. Well, that's been going on for decades. And when you combine that aspect to it, to the imbalance in work life in the veterinary space, plus the COVID-19 pandemic, we had an explosion. We had an explosion of adoptions, explosion of pets trying to access emergency care, and a shift in the veterinary field with shortages and cultural issues that we will dive into in this talk. And I had noticed the trends here during my surgery internship at Long Island Veterinary Specialists and thought, boy, those people who call up that are concerned, what if a doctor took those calls? What if they actually triaged over the phone and make that a business model? They'll get the answers that they need. They won't have to bombard the receptionists, and it'll help with all the cultural issues downstream. And that's how VetTriage was born. According to the American Veterinary Medical Association, the AVMA, I modeled the company after their principles because we tend to follow what the AVMA says. Regardless of disagreements that I may have with them or any veterinarian has with any organization, we want to start from a foundation. And so the AVMA dictates what the telehealth principles are, as well as the subcategories. Telehealth, in brief, for anybody who does not know, is simply virtual care between a patient and a provider, doctor, patient, veterinarian, animal. And it's over any means of telecommunication. It may be phone or video. When you look at telehealth, it's broken down into subcategories. Teletriage and teleadvice is where my company lives, because legally and ethically speaking, that is where I knew, based on the AVMA definition of these terms, as well as the ethics behind veterinary medicine, the oath that we all take as doctors, I knew teletriage and teleadvice is right where I wanted to live. That's where we can help the most number of people and help our colleagues on the ground. Teletriage basically dictates, do you have an emergency or not? and then we go from there. Tele-advice is, what advice can I give you as a doctor? And of course, the tele implies any level of telecommunications, whether it be video or phone. So when you look at the telehealth space, there are a multitude of platforms out there now. VetTriage was the first of these platforms over 4 years now, since we started the company, so before the pandemic actually. And since then, if you dive into this world, you'll see a lot of variations. So variations that may include whether you're a software company or if you provide video or non-video to consumers, whether you are associated with a brick and mortar facility or you operate outside of a facility like VetTriage. Asynchronous implies a delay in communication, texting, emailing, versus synchronous, which is live. Video, for example, is real time. Do you have doctors? Do you have technicians? Who's giving the advice? Do you have specialists, general practitioners? What type of species? What type of telehealth? Telemedicine, teletriage, teleadvice, teleconsulting. There's a whole bunch of teles underneath that broad category of telehealth. And then are you going to focus on the consumer, or you focus on the colleagues on the field, doctors and technicians, hospitals, rescue organizations, universities, and of course, how are you going to operate in terms of hours of operation? All these things have to be considered. And when you look into the virtual space, you then have to deal with HIPAA. And we are the only company that's HIPAA compliant. This is for security purposes. This is for cybersecurity. And a massive shout out to Lucia Veterinary Data Security. I know those guys are incredible. For veterinary hospitals that are looking for security measures, because there are folks who have hacked small companies, veterinary practices, and large ones. You want to make sure that you have protection, but we are HIPAA compliant for this reason. So now when you look into the relationship between a doctor and a patient, you have to think, okay, what am I allowed to do? And in the veterinary field, we have what's called the VCPR. This dictates that a doctor has met the pet in person, can diagnose conditions, oversee care, and follow up as a recheck. And the reason why the VCPR is so important is that our patients, much like human pediatrics, cannot speak for themselves. You're relying on a pet owner, or in the case of pediatrics, the parent, to describe what symptoms you're seeing with that pet. So there's some interpretation there that needs to be deciphered by the doctor. And so the VCPR typically is something that's established when you physically meet the person and their pet. And that's, of course, what was in the past. Now we're seeing more and more states adopting a virtual VCPR. So it'll allow the veterinarians virtually more access to consumers, pet owners, and from the pet owner standpoint, more access and spectrum of care. And so when you look at VetTriage, my platform, we focus on emergency situations. When you have an emergency, we're going to take into account what is the current health status of the animal and what generated that call to us via video. So with all of that, you can imagine, well, should there be some sort of safety net for the pet owner? How do they know which company to use? We have guardrails. And guardrails implies these basic principles. There's privacy involved. There's a doctor that's making a judgment call. You're giving people the choice to use the telehealth platform. They're not forced to. It's live video. The consumer, the client, the pet owner, has written consent that they're going to use your platform. You still have standards of care. You have some form of follow-up. And if you're going to prescribe things, which is a very hot topic in the telehealth space, you need protections around that as well. So we are moving forward in this field, in the virtual space, in a manner that's unprecedented from before. And again, my company was the first one doing this, and we are right at the forefront of that movement. So VetTriage is approaching 100,000 sessions in under 4 years. We're in over 20 different countries. We've triaged almost 40 different animal types, from fish to horses, everything in between. We have a large staff of doctors and support. We're operational 24/7, numerous partners across the globe. We have a Spanish-speaking platform, a horse-specific platform, and we are working on publications. So for the entrepreneur in the audience, this is why all this matters. When you think about an idea or a concept, your thought is, what problem am I trying to solve? What problem am I trying to solve? And that's where the VetTriage principles came into play. I saw a problem. Pet owners needed advice. So here are the other issues that we're combating. And this is also where VetTriage has played a role from the get-go. We have a shortage, a relative shortage. We are graduating the highest number of veterinary students in our history. We have the largest number of vet schools in our history. And yet for some reason, we can't seem to find veterinarians. My theory, veterinarians, when they graduate, get their first job, they deal with the work-life imbalance, cultural toxicity, and they leave the field. And it's a shame. We are losing veterinarians because of this, despite graduating the highest number in our veterinary history. Suicide rates. This is probably, some of you might be the first time you're hearing this. Those of us in the veterinary field, we know this very well. There are way too high numbers of veterinarians who are attempting suicide, think about suicide, have committed suicide, and it's not just on the veterinary side, it's also support staff, veterinary technicians, for example. So this profession, as rewarding as it is taking a huge toll. If we can help with their work-life balance and the things they're struggling with, we can help mitigate these numbers. Staff turnover is an issue. So why do we see such high staff turnover? It's over 20% in the veterinary field. That's way too high. And so mental health issues, debt, compassion fatigue, staff shortages, these are all the reasons why we're seeing doctors and technicians burn out and leave the field. And then finally, for our new grads, they're getting hit the hardest. They're having trouble figuring out work-life balance. They want to save animals and do good for society. They also need to have a life. They need work-life balance. And between that and social media or any other level of cyberbullying where pet owners who are disgruntled are going to mentally harm our veterinarians, this is rough. And so we need to figure out ways that we can try and achieve that work-life balance. So when you look at all those issues that we're trying to contend with and you combine it with the principles of telehealth, you then think, okay, those two worlds have some overlap. How can we leverage that? Well, we have to first start with changing the way veterinarians and the veterinary profession think about telehealth. It's not going anywhere. And virtual care on the patient side, the pet owner, the client, they're used to this. Everybody has some sort of video capabilities in the palm of their hands. Video conferencing is the norm now. So when you look at barriers to telehealth, most of it is exposure. Veterinary students don't have enough exposure in academia. Veterinarians, whether they be new vets or seasoned vets, just don't know what telemedicine, telehealth is all about. And by the way, the reason why in this slide I have telemedicine in quotation marks is because telemedicine is a very specific subtype of telehealth, but it is not telehealth in total. It is a category, just like teletriage and teleadvice are categories. So frequently, this is from the legislation level, so laws, federal and state, all the way down to just day-to-day conversations. We use the word telemedicine synonymously with telehealth, and that's inappropriate. Telemedicine means something very specific, and it means something tied to the VCPR and brick and mortar. So it has to be differentiated from teleadvice and teletriage. All of it is telehealth as a broad category, but this has to be used appropriately. And so we're not even using the correct words when we talk about publications and day-to-day conversations. Misdiagnosis, misconceptions is something that's been shown on the human side to not necessarily be a concern, and we also see the same level of accuracy in the veterinary side, although we need way more studies for that. But on the human side, plenty of papers out there to show, hey, you know, the doctors and you as the patient, they can figure stuff out over video conferencing. And also, by the way, towards the bottom there, like I said, patients are accustomed to this. They're fine with a virtual experience. They prefer it. The concept that clients, our pet owners, are not adapted for this modality in the vet field is also untrue. Here are some papers that show that it's been used and it's been used successfully. Clients are very accustomed to this type of virtual landscape. We as veterinarians, as a group, are still having to catch up to what the pet owner is doing. These following slides just to show you there are more publications that are come out since then. They are small papers. They have a similar theme to where the veterinary field just is very hesitant due to lack of exposure to telehealth. They're worried about the legal and the ethical. So with VetTriage, one of the many challenges, right, those problems we're trying to tackle is to help spearhead a movement to increase exposure. Here is our very first VetTriage publication. I have a handful of publications from before my life from VetTriage. Here's our very first on VetTriage. 15 never reported species that were triaged with the platform. Here are the 15 animal types. First ever in telehealth history. We are also currently in the works with a very large paper and more to follow. The reason why I stress the word large is because even 15 is a lot in the veterinary space. But compared to the human side where they have thousands upon thousands in some studies, we need better. If we're going to show with objective data that telehealth can be used legally and ethically, we need to have larger studies. So stand by for more to come when you look at the telehealth side of publications. And this is just pictures, snapshots of me giving the telehealth consults to these really unique animal types. everything from squirrel to sea otter, chinchilla. We published each one as a case series in this paper and are incredibly proud of it. This is where I see veterinary telehealth falling in the grand landscape. It's associated with the general practitioner, rescues and shelters, universities and specialists. And this is not where this ring is going to end. We're now seeing other avenues like telediagnostics coming to play, where pet owners can actually monitor their pet's conditions with objective data at home. It's going to play a role here. This is incredible where we're at now with telehealth, and we are at the forefront of this. So here's how I want to close this off. We outlined what VetTriage is. We outlined the problems that we're trying to face, those challenges. And here now are the observations. And the reason why I'm using the word observations here, this is what I've seen with VetTriage in almost 100,000 cases with over 60 veterinarians in over 20 countries. So this is not objective data, but these are observations that we're seeing, trends to combat every single one of those challenges that I outlined previously. That's the foundation, right, of your idea, entrepreneurs. How do I fix the challenges that we're facing? And then what is the outcome? Was I successful? We are seeing improved retention, less turnover, easier hiring, less revenue loss, a more cohesive team. This is because when clinics partner with VetTriage, they can offload cases to VetTriage when they are feeling overwhelmed, understaffed, they're at capacity, meaning they're out of cage space. There's blizzard, hurricane, other inclement weather that prohibits people from accessing veterinary care. So if we can ease off, if we can help them send cases to VetTriage, it improves the staff. Decrease suicide rates. We are seeing, I get emails and actual cards in the mail of facilities that say, wow, this is my first Thanksgiving I've ever had off in 25 years. Wow, we kept our doors open when we were about to quit 3 years ago before we found you guys. And so we're seeing less compassion fatigue. With that comes better patient care, obviously, and your leadership team is then viewed as being caring. We need empathy in this profession, and so this helps not just the quality of care, it helps with your staff having faith in the leadership, and of course, clients are going to be happy with that as well. You can customize now the caseload that a veterinarian is seeing, whether it's in general practice or emergency, with their experience level if you use VetTriage. So if you have a doctor who's fairly inexperienced, but you want them to grow, obviously, you can send more cases to VetTriage and help nurture that doctor's growth. And so we're seeing that live on the floor in these brick and mortars that partner with us. The telehealth barriers. We are tackling all of these things over time with real cases, real life cases, showing that we can do this legally, ethically, we can meet standards. The technology and security portions of this are constantly being upgraded, and so we want to try and combat the biggest barrier to telehealth, which are honestly veterinarians, because we're so worried about the legality and ethics of it, as you can see from those research papers. Clients, no problem adapting to virtual care. It's the medical staff, the medical team that needs to trust the virtual care, that it can be done responsibly. And so that's why we're publishing papers to show objectively you can do this safely and ethically and legally for our animals that need help, that need access to care. We are spearheading a movement with combating the antiquated guidelines that are currently in the virtual space, and we want to increase general knowledge. Just the fact that Cornell has me on this platform is bringing awareness to those who may not know what the telehealth space is in the veterinary field and what challenges we're struggling with on the ground and virtually, and how VetTriage is combating those things. I encourage anybody at any point to reach out at any time. These are all my social media handles, both for myself and for VetTriage. There's my email. Reach out at any point. I believe that the solution to all these challenges that the veterinary field is facing really lies in mentorship for the young upcoming professionals. Whether you're in the vet field or otherwise, mentorship is sorely lacking. And a lot of what I've been describing here of the challenges that VetTriage is trying to tackle is not just access to care for pet owners, spectrum of care for pet owners. It's for our veterinarians that are up and coming, because they are the future of this profession. And the old school veterinary mentality of an imbalance with work and with life isn't going to cut it anymore. There's cultural aspects in society. There are generational aspects in society that are affecting, that are embedded in our new graduates, and we have to change the landscape to accommodate for that. VetTriage is a tool that I created to combat not just pet owners getting access and spectrum of care, but also providing relief for our colleagues on the ground so that they have a way of offloading their burdens onto VetTriage so they can focus on the brick and mortar on the ground in ICU, saving those lives. That's the goal here. Otherwise, the profession is going to be in trouble. We can't have that. I love this profession way too much to see that happen, and I know any veterinarian out there wants to have that spark back. Despite how fatigued we feel, we can make this better, and this is one avenue by which we can do that. I welcome any questions, comments, and ideas, and as I said, please reach out.
Before you continue, first off, thanks for talking fast. Amazing presentation. Go back one slide so we can leave your contact details up.
Okay.
Shadi, Dr. Shadi has gone and joined CTBN on LinkedIn, so you can chat with him there. But we have a couple of questions. Let's do a couple of really quick answers first. Are you offering this service in all 50 states? Yes or no?
Globally. So yes.
Okay. Excellent. All right. So I've always found that my veterinarian has more compassion and empathy than my actual doctor. So I just completely just adore what you're doing. Tell me this, is one of the questions from the field is like, how do you document your interactions and protect your veterinarians from client complaints? Because that's a huge item. Like, how do you bubble wrap yourself to ensure that you're doing this without opening up the Pandora's box of legal issues?
One of the aspects of providing virtual care with a VCPR, so in brick and mortar, is that you have to record the medical information. It has to be recorded. We don't have the same guidelines in the virtual space when it comes to teletriage and teleadvice. We're actually not required to document medical records. However, being a veterinarian myself, I know that the evolution of this is going to be eventually we're going to be required to have records. So we actually create our own platform set up like an electronic medical record system, an EMR, to have veterinarians who can document their entire interaction with that pet owner and then send that pet owner a summary of the advice that we give. And before the pet owner even signs up, they sign a disclaimer that they have approved, they have read and understood that says what the limitations of virtual care are. So all of these avenues are meant to protect our veterinarians from anything going wrong in our space. I will tell you, in almost 100,000 cases, not a single medical board complaint. It is remarkable when you provide guardrails and you provide quality standard of care virtually, things work out. Wouldn't you know it? And so we have multiple avenues in the field to combat that.
I have a couple really quick questions.
Please.
All right. So can someone that's equivalent to an RN, an experienced vet tech, could they do some of the basic triage and pass the difficult cases on to someone like yourself, like board certified surgeon?
So in the field, classically, the folks who've been doing triaging were actually the technicians or even assistants or even receptionists over the phone, not seeing the pet, and either not having any medical training or not being a doctor but medically trained. That's the way it's been for a very long time. I decided that if we're going to do this, we're going to do this with doctors, because although technicians are absolutely phenomenal, they are skilled and knowledgeable and empathetic, I need doctors to prove a point when you're trying to spearhead a movement. If we're going to try and change things, we have to do it with what I would consider the gold standard level of care. So yes, technicians do have a place in the virtual space, and I actually have technicians on my platform, but their goal is not medical advice. Their goal is to help pet owners who are struggling with video or internet capabilities so they can get on with our doctors over the phone. And that's their role, and as well as calling in emergencies for our doctors, because it's nice to have a medically trained person calling in, like a university like Cornell, for example, for their emergency department to send a case over there. So technicians do have a space in the virtual world. However, on my platform, the doctors are the ones giving advice.
Okay. And the last and final question is, does AI help you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, AI is very interesting. So I've leveraged AI when it comes to diagnostics, most notably radiographs, so X-rays. When I've worked in brick and mortar, I haven't been a fan yet. But however, this space, of course, is still fairly new and is growing. I have also seen it used to help document communication between between individuals, like in a meeting, that can come in handy for our platform. I haven't dabbled yet because I want to see what's going on. We want to make sure all the bugs are out before you start to implement things like that. But AI is going to have a place in this. It also has a place in terms of sort of what I'd call self-diagnosing your pet. If you had a large enough data set and a pet owner who's concerned can plug in some data points about their pet, will that AI system tell them something? What the possible diagnosis is it an emergency or not? What should you do next? And again, we're not there quite yet because platforms like that do exist. They're just not very good. And so we'll see in the future how this evolves further.
We want to make sure there's no any hallucinations when it comes to this type of stuff. So thank you so much. Thank you for talking fast. There's so many more questions. There's some suggestions. Daniel Green had some great marketing suggestions. So we're going to continue this dialogue because this is a fascinating topic. Thank you so much for this and just completely fantastic and fascinating conversation that we've had today. Thank you so much for coming and visiting with us whilst you're on the road. Safe travels, my friend.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
All right. Tom, I'm going to hand it back to you.